Demonstrators are protesting the oil price hike announced 2 weeks ago. Iranians are also feeling the effects of an economy squeezed by U.S. sanctions. Growth has fallen even as European countries try to help support trade with Iran. Protesters are directing their anger at their own leaders. Karim Sajapour is a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. He joins us live now from Washington. Karim, thank you so much for being with us. So just walk us through where all of this started. We know that gasoline price hikes were imposed up to 50%, and protesters are angry about that. But just talk to us about how much the Iranian economy has really suffered after Western sanctions.
Well, as you mentioned, the protests were triggered by a rise in gasoline prices, but they've been sustained by much deeper grievances, long history of repression and corruption in Iran, which predates the U.S. economic sanctions. The sanctions of the Trump administration have certainly worsened Iran's economic situation. According to the IMF, Iran's economic growth rate in the upcoming years is expected to be negative 10%. And I think what's notable when you listen to the slogans of the protesters, their ire is directed at their own leadership, at corruption and repression. I haven't heard any slogans of people blaming the United States, U.S. imperialism, or economic sanctions. So when you're actually living in Iran, what's much more palpable for you is the corruption, mismanagement around you.
So what are the other options that the Iranian leadership has in order to get the Iranian economy back on track beyond, say, for example, raising gas prices by 50%? Can they boost exports of non-oil goods like food and textiles, for example? What are their other options?
The hard reality for Iran's leadership is there's really no way for them to reverse their economic decline absent an eventual deal with the United States. And the reason why that is that the way U.S. sanctions are set up, it essentially forces companies and countries around the world to make a simple choice, and that is, do you want to do business with America, or do you want to do business with Iran? And for the vast majority of companies and countries around the world, that's a very easy decision. They may import oil and gas from Iran, but they can get that oil and gas from other countries like Saudi Arabia, whereas the United States is an indispensable economic partner. So I think that the regime in Iran may calculate that they can sustain this level of economic duress until November of 2020 and hope that another president is elected in the United States, but they're going to continue to face these protests and deep-seated economic, political, and social grievances.
You mentioned that the IMF has projected that the Iranian economy will contract by about 10% in the coming year. Also, inflation in that country is in double digits. I think it's 37% or so. What does that mean for the average Iranian living in Iran, just in terms of their own economic difficulties from a day-to-day perspective?
You know, it depends. For every person, it's different in Iran. But certainly, you hear stories of people saying, you know, they went to the market and the prices of basic foodstuffs had doubled compared to the previous week. And oftentimes, Iran's response to protests exacerbates the economic challenges the country is facing. So to take an example, they shut down the internet this time so they could kill people and detain people in the dark so the world wouldn't see. So over as many as 400 people have been killed, as many as 7,000 have been imprisoned. They shut off the internet, and that unto itself has had a huge economic impact because millions of Iranians said we couldn't conduct any business. WhatsApp was shut down, internet was shut down, they couldn't communicate with one another, they couldn't communicate with the outside world. So the measures that Iran takes to suppress popular economic discontent oftentimes exacerbates economic discontent.
All right, Karim, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it.